Organs and your emotions are so intimately connected, I want to leave you with this. The next time you feel physically unwell, will you stop and ask yourself what emotions might be out of balance too? It's just a completely fascinating perspective to take with you. Thank you so much for exploring this incredible inner factory with me in this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next one.
I worked as a banker for 30 years, but now I work as an acupuncturist.
Welcome everyone to this explainer. Today we're diving into something really fascinating. We're going to look at an Eastern medicine concept that views the human body not just as individual parts, but as a totally interconnected, incredibly well-organized factory. If you've ever felt like modern medicine sometimes just looks at your body as a bunch of isolated pieces, treating symptoms rather than the whole system, well, you are absolutely going to love the holistic framework we're breaking down today. Okay, let's jump right in. But before we get too deep into the weeds, I want you to challenge how you normally think about your own anatomy. What if instead of defining an organ by its physical shape, the flesh, the blood, the borders, what if we defined it by what it actually does, by its continuous actions, its energy, and how it relates to everything else? It's a completely different way to look at yourself. And that brings us right to the core concept of today's explainer, Zhang Fu. This is a foundational idea that teaches us the body isn't just this static, fleshy machine. No, it's a dynamic, living system of continuous actions and reactions. Today, we're focusing entirely on understanding how these incredible systems actually function and relate to one another, keeping it all in plain, simple English. So, here's how we're going to break down this biological factory today. First, the Eastern body view. Second, the 5 storage organs. Then, the 6 processing organs. Fourth, the extraordinary oddballs. And finally, the interconnected web. Okay, let's start with section 1, the Eastern body view, redefining anatomy. So there's a primary divide in our inner factory. Think of it like this. You have the 5 zong, or the storage organs. These are basically the executives, or like highly secure vaults. Their whole job is to produce and safely store your most vital elements, like your energy and your blood. Then, on the other side, you have the 6 fu, the processing organs. These are the factory floor workers. They're constantly moving, taking in raw materials like food, digesting it, grabbing the good nutrients, and shipping out the waste. They're essentially a continuous moving pipeline. Moving on to section 2, the 5 storage organs, the body's executives. Now, there are exactly 5 of these critical executive Zhang organs, and here is where it gets really mind-blowing. These aren't just mechanical pumps or filters. In this system, they are deeply, deeply tied to your specific emotional states. Basically, your physical health and mental health. Totally inseparable. Here is how they map out. The liver, which is the master of energy movement, is heavily tied to anger. The heart pumps blood and houses your spirit, and it's tied to joy. The spleen manages your digestion, but it gets completely bogged down by excessive thought and worry. Your lungs handle your breathing, but they literally carry the weight of sadness. And finally, the kidney, which stores your core life essence, is directly impacted by fear. So if you're experiencing extreme anger, that might literally disrupt your liver's function. Or intense fear could actually drain your kidney's energy reserves. Pretty wild, right? All right, let's look at section 3, the 6 processing organs, the factory floor. To see how these workers operate, let's just follow a piece of food through the system. Step 1, the stomach, is the initial receiver. It takes in the raw materials and vigorously breaks them down. Step 2, the small intestine steps in. This is your quality control department, carefully sorting the pure, high-value nutrients from the impure waste. Step 3, the large intestine, grabs that impure waste, sucks up any remaining water, and packs it up for shipping out. And Step 4, your bladder acts as the liquid waste management center, holding on to unnecessary water from the kidneys until it's the right time to let it go. Boom! Good stuff gets extracted for the executives, and the garbage gets tossed out efficiently. Which brings us to section 4, the extraordinary oddballs, unique functions and exceptions. Now, every factory has its oddballs, right? And the ones in your body are fascinating. Take the brain. The source texts beautifully call it the sea of marrow, which is formed by gathered life essence to power your cognition. Marrow itself lives inside the bones to keep them strong. Both the brain and marrow rely heavily on that vital essence from the kidneys, which actually explains why things like memory loss or weaker bones happen as we age, and that essence naturally declines. Then you have the uterus, completely focused on managing menstruation and pregnancy. And finally, the gallbladder. It's kind of a rebel. It's technically one of those processing workers because it aids digestion, but it's also an oddball because instead of handling dirty food waste, it stores pure, refined bile. We also really have to talk about the sanjiao, sometimes called the triple burner. This is the sixth processing organ, but it trips a lot of people up because it doesn't have a normal physical shape like a stomach. Instead, think of the sanjiao as the ultimate factory plumbing system. It's this vast, continuous passageway for water and body fluids running through the spaces between all your organs, ensuring everything flows smoothly through the entire upper, middle, and lower sections of your body. And finally, Section 5, the interconnected web, tying the factory together. The absolutely crucial thing to understand here is the buddy system. Every single executive Zheng organ is partnered up with a processing Fu partner. Liver goes with gallbladder, heart with small intestine, spleen with stomach, lung with large intestine, and kidney with bladder. Because of this really tight partnership, if one gets sick or out of balance, the other one is immediately affected. You literally can't look at one without looking at its partner. So, how do they all talk to each other? Well, they're linked by the body's internal currencies. First, you've got qi, that's the vital energy driving everything. You have blood, physically nourishing the tissues. Body fluids, keeping the joints and internal pathways moist, relying on that Sanjiao plumbing network we just mentioned. And essence, that fundamental, precious root energy stored way down in the kidneys. These currencies are constantly circulating, keeping the whole factory running like a well-oiled machine.
There's a quote directly from the source texts that hits the nail right on the head. When one organ undergoes a change, its paired organ will likely change too. It perfectly sums up everything we've been talking about today. You just cannot treat one isolated part of the body without considering its partner, its emotional state, and really the whole system. Everything in the factory is connected.
So knowing that your physical organs and your emotions are so intimately connected, I want to leave you with this. The next time you feel physically unwell, will you stop and ask yourself what emotions might be out of balance too? It's just a completely fascinating perspective to take with you. Thank you so much for exploring this incredible inner factory with me in this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next one.
I worked as a banker for 30